On this episode, we ask, do Muslims worship the same God we do? Can religions talk to each other? And Hywel has to save his marriage.
Oh, what?
Good morning everyone and welcome to the first TGI Monday of 2016. Happy New Year to you all. Happy New Year to you all.
Happy New Year.
I just wanted to explain one thing that some people have been wondering about, why these shows are called prequel shows. That's because we're still in our experimental stage. We're trying lots of new things and then we're trying to work out the best way of doing this. So we'd love to hear all your feedback. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What would you like to see more of? What works, what doesn't. So please do get in touch with us any way you like. Have we all had a good Christmas, a good break?
Yeah, it was alright, yeah, just good.
Really good. Anyone get a hoverboard for Christmas?
I wish.
No. I'll get the sack when I let that bloke in the Philippines, innit?
The priest hoverboarding around after
Very effective.
Well, I did wear
I could see Bishop Mark using one.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, he would, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
Okay, well, we've got a lot to get in this week's show, so let's move on to our first question. This is from Jeremy Stork, who messaged us on the Facebook page. He asks, do Muslims, Jews and Christians worship the same God, and does this matter? So what I think we'll do is we'll just try and answer this, because as I say, we've got quite a lot of things to get through around the similar sort of topic. So maybe if we just give a sort of quick one-sentence answer each. Hywel, why don't we start with you? Do we worship the same God, and does it matter?
Well, I think there's only one God, and I think we're all trying to worship him.
Okay, great. Zoe, what do you think?
I would agree with you, and I'd go as far as to say yes. I think we do, because our scriptures and others.
One sentence, she said.
I know.
Go on quickly.
They talk about us, all people being created by God, and all of our offerings and worship will be inadequate in trying to worship God. So all our attempts to worship God can only be the same God.
Okay, Dan, what do you think?
I think the answer is I don't know. I would want to say that I don't know whether Muslims are worshipping the same God wrongly, or whether they don't worship the same God as we do.
Okay,
but I wouldn't want to say. I don't think it's clear.
I think it is quite clear, actually.
Dogma.
I would say it's not the same God, and for a similar reason that we talked about a few weeks ago when we were talking about Jehovah's Witnesses. To me, the fundamental thing that distinguishes the Christian understanding of who God is that he is Father, Son and Spirit. And I think, the Bible does talk about everybody as worshippers, but people worshipping false gods. And I think, to me it seems that unless you're worshipping Jesus as God and the Holy Spirit as God, as well as God the Father, then that is quite a different understanding of what God is.
Yeah, but the thing with that is that you're right there, but I think the issue there is you're assuming that people who worship what they understand as the Christian God are actually doing it properly.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is that what you're doing then, you're saying that worship is actually to do with a list of doctrinal givens,
right.
Yeah.
rather than a
and that's a
living
really good
relationship.
point, because I don't think we made that very clear last time, and I do want to say that it's not about having the right denominational affiliation, it's not about having the right doctrinal standpoint. It is about who are you trusting. And to me, I would say as a Christian that the way that God has taught us to worship him is through his son Jesus and through trusting in Jesus, and so I would still say it's different. Let's move on, because I want to say our next question relates to this, and some of what we think about that will come out again. The question is about interfaith dialogue, and one of the reasons for asking this, you may have seen in the news over the last month a couple of different situations where women who are not Muslims have chosen to wear the hijab in solidarity with Muslims. And that really brings us to the question about interfaith dialogue and interfaith relationships. The question is, what is the goal of interfaith dialogue, and is it fruitful? I don't know who wants to kick us off on that. Maybe Dan, why don't you start?
So interfaith dialogue isn't one thing. Interfaith dialogue can be about exploring each other's views. It could be an international relations project where different church leaders from across the globe might talk. It might happen locally between communities to reduce community tension.
Yep.
I don't think it's any one thing. It can be evangelistic, specifically to try to introduce another group of people to your own religious faith, or it could just be about understanding and improving relationships.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be one thing, but my experience of it tends to be, because I'm an ex-policeman, my experience of it was very much in the policing context, where you had different groups of people who we wanted to bring people together, not to say they were the same, but to have an accurate understanding of what their differences are. I don't actually think that dialogue itself is always going to reduce tension, because I think human nature, being what it is, there's always going to be jealousies, there's always going to be hostilities, but it does help when you have a correct view of somebody to make a right choice about how to behave towards them.
But I think it's to do with working in any sort of different cultural context. Like I remember when I worked in the lab in Cambridge, we had people from all over the world there, and it was really fascinating because people had all sorts of different cultural contexts. Like I remember Sergei got really angry because he had to take the 25th of December off. Right, when that wasn't when Christmas was, because he was Russian.
Of course, yeah.
And he had to go in for a meeting on the 6th of January,
And
which
that
was
was his
just
Christmas
bang out of
day,
order.
yeah.
And Hero had to take off the 28th of January. I'm sorry, Hero, I got it wrong. 28th of December, which is the Emperor's birthday, which is really important in Japan. But it's only in forming real relationships with people, being friends with people, that you actually do those dialogues in a productive way.
Yeah.
Which is where dialogue actually comes to its limits. And I think when we're talking about what the purpose of interfaith stuff is, if it stays in our heads and doesn't move to here, then I think it becomes an exercise in cognitive learning, but may not affect how we treat one another. There's a strong tradition of shared silence as an ecumenical and as a way of exploring and sharing faith. I was at a good friend and tutor's funeral not that long ago, and a Muslim was part of the group of people who were leading the prayers. And it was profoundly shared, profoundly loving, compassionate, and almost said more about who God is in a way, that we don't need to have the lists or the stuff that stays here, but actually that when we stop with the lists and share a space and share some silence together, as well as share experiences, because actually when we start hearing each other's stories, there is so much about experiencing a God that we could not possibly comprehend. And that's a tradition in most
Mrs. got that right
faiths.
as well, though, because my wife often says, she's got this thing, catchphrase, she says that we're all in for a shock when we're dead, but I think that person's in for more of a shock than I am. Right? Now, she's right there, because
like
I think we can't say that, you know, all images of whatever are equally correct, which I don't think that's true. I think that, basically, then, if you say that, then you're not living in your own tradition. But I think we have to recognise at the same time that we are all in for a shock, but some people are in for more of a shock than others. I think that's a good point.
It's not as it designs.
The key, exactly, and I think the key point here as well is to do with in the scriptures where we see Jesus interacting with, and in the Old Testament as well, people from other faiths, like the three wise men. They're not Christians. Well, nobody was then, but they're not Jews or anything like that. So God is calling all people, which is what Epiphany's about, isn't it?
I think the three wise men came to worship Jesus. The three wise men would have been the first Christians, as opposed to have not been Christians.
But there are certainly, I mean, Howard's pointed out, there are certainly other examples where Jesus is involved with people who are clearly not Jews. The Samaritan woman at the well, for example, is a great example of someone.
Jesus took a lot of trouble to point out where people are so focused on the letter or the details of their faith to miss the spirit. And I think when we share sacrificial acts of love and compassion, and which requires serious humility, and that's when I think that's where the connection points come.
And I think a big thing is, people are very fond of saying, aren't they, that religion just causes wars. And you look at history and there's a sense in which you can say, well, that is really true. And something I think that interfaith dialogue done well can really do is help us to see that we don't need to be afraid of people from other religions.
but
we don't need to be afraid of.
Yeah, but you have to remember as well, though, right? Is everyone goes on about that all the time.
Yeah.
But everyone forgets about the 100 million people killed by secular.
People cause wars for all kinds of reasons. And religion can
so
be
what
part
you're doing
of
there, what you're actually
wider.
doing then, you're saying is that wars are caused by people who are not like me.
Yes.
Because I'm not
exactly.
religious, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not religious. So therefore, all the wars are caused by people who are not like me. So magically, ping, I don't cause
And
wars.
actually, that's the best thing about interfaith dialogue is you realise people are not like me, but also they're like me.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can know them and you can be friends with them and you can enjoy spending time with them and you can find how much you do have in common, as well as, like you said at the beginning, what's accurate about what's different between the two things.
Good to be different.
It's good to be different. I think we need to move on. I'm sorry we haven't had time to talk about that more. And I'm sorry we had another question about that, which we haven't had chance to follow up. We're going to follow that up, I think, online in the online pastor clinic, which happens every Thursday evening, 7 till 9. Live chats on the online pastor Facebook group. If you're not a member, you might like to join us for that discussion
Have you got the URL
week.
to give them?
It's online pastor, Facebook group, facebook.com/group/online pastor. We can put that in the comments. Please do keep sending in your questions. Please don't feel they've got to be deep theological questions that sound impressive. It's okay to send in questions however small and silly you may think they are. If you're thinking it, odds are somebody else is thinking it too, and we'd love to hear from you. Here's a great example to finish with of a silly question that we've had sent in. This one comes from a Mrs. Emma Snook, who spoke directly to one of the panel. I wonder which one. She says, "Hello all, very much enjoying the show. Having just caught the Christmas episode," that's episode 4 if you want to check it out, "I'd like to particularly ask the vicar in the stupid snowman jumper." Who was that?
It's the jumper that was bought for me.
It's the jumper that was bought for him. He says, "Nothing in the world is certain, even that his wife loves him." She would like to ask you, Hywel, have you not heard of death and taxes?
No, I haven't. Oh, well.
That's you told.
She's got me there, hasn't she? But I think I answered that in the original video, and maybe I'll do an extra on that.
Just
myself.
Sounds like you need to. There's a bit of mending to be done there.
We're all in for a shock, but obviously I'm in for more of a shock than she is.
Sounds like it.
There you go. We'll see you next week. Do keep in touch.
On the next episode, we're going to be talking about fad diet, so please send in your questions about dieting, body image, refit, that sort of thing, and also as well how we can hear the voice of God. With the voice, couldn't you?
You could do it, yeah.
Next time
You can
on
do that,
TGI Mondays.